Hello learners, today we will be discussing about national environmental legislation. This environmental legislation is a collection of laws and regulations pertaining to air quality, water quality, the wilderness, the endangered wildlife and other environmental factors. So, the goal of environmental legislation is to regulate the interaction between man and the natural world, so as to reduce the threats to the environment and also to increase the public health. That is the bottom line of environmental legislation. These environmental laws encompasses laws related to air, water, natural resources, wildlife, etc. So, in today's discussion, we will be talking about the National Environmental Legislation Act like the Water Act, the Air Act, the Environmental Protection Act 1986 and also the pollution control boards both at the center and at the state level. So, as far as our country is concerned, the measures to formulate environmental legislation started with the setting up of a committee, the Tiwari Committee. Way back in 1980, the Government of India set up a committee under the chairmanship of N.D. Tiwari, then the Deputy Chairperson of Planning Commission, to review the existing environmental legislation, acts and recommend suitable legislative measures and administrative machinery also for environmental protection. The committee under the chairmanship of N.D. Tiwari stressed the need for the proper management of the country's valuable natural resources like land resources, forest resources, water resources, agriculture resources in order to conserve the nation's ecological basis. The committee, after going through all the legislations, recommended certain basic path. First is to creation of comprehensive environmental code to cover all types of pollution, whether it is air pollution, water pollution, in fact every kind of pollution and environmental degradation. The second important recommendation of the committee is to constitute the environmental codes in all the district headquarters and appointment of experts to assist the codes. Okay. And the third important recommendation of the committee is creation of Department of Environment. And next recommendation is setting up of Central Land Commission. The committee also recommended providing economic incentives to industries, heavy industries, to encourage environmental friendly products and also to provide the benefits like income tax benefits, sales tax benefits for adapting technologies which are cleaner and sustainable in nature. And other recommendations include providing investment tax credits for purchasing devices like purification devices and also replacement cost of also, if you have an equipment, the government will be providing the replacement cost also, in a way that will help the industries to go about with this kind of new technologies and new kind of equipments which in a way reduce the pollution load in the environment. Next important recommendation is providing provisions in terms of minimal tax or no tax also on the manufacture of pollution control devices. That is a very significant recommendation. And an important recommendation is making the environmental impact assessment, that is EIA, a prerequisite for setting up of any industry. And it's a wonderful recommendation, that is environmental impact assessment. Still that is the cornerstone for establishing any kind of industries. Subsequent to these kind of recommendations, the Department of Environment was established in the year 1980. In order to improve the implementation of laws and policy directives, the Department of Environment was replaced by an integrated department of Environment, Forest and Wildlife in the year 1985. In fact, later on the integrated department of Environment, Forest and Wildlife took the shape of a ministry that is called Ministry of Environment and Forest. However, now it is called as Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Very recently it has been christened as Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, looking at the gravity of the situation in terms of the climate change impacts and the kind of measures, kind of legislations, kind of activities, proactive activities required to contain climate change, as well as adapt the nation to manage the impacts of climate change. So let us see one by one the acts, the legislations which has driven our country towards environmental sustenance, towards safeguarding the environment, towards safeguarding the ecological basis of our existence. The first and foremost act is the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. 1974, way back, means 3, 4, 5 decades back itself, this particular act was promulgated, and this is a very important act. In fact, it is a comprehensive legislation, that regulates agencies responsible for checking water pollution, and also, under this particular act, the pollution control boards also was set in place, both at the center as well as the states. This act was formulated to prevent the pollution of water in particular by the industries, the agricultural activities, and even the household wastewater also that contaminate our water resources, whether it's a lake or underground, or the groundwater, the river water. So this particular act, the Water Act 1974, is a significant development as far as our country's environmental legislation is concerned. And the main objectives of this Water Act 1974 are basically to provide the basic the framework for prevention, control and abatement of water pollution, and also to take all the steps possible to restore the wholesome of the water. So there are these two are the very important objectives of Water Act. The Act also provides for the constitution of the central and state boards for preventing water pollution. Under Water Act 1974, the pollutants, the sewage cannot be discharged into any water body, including lakes, and it is the duty of the pollution control boards, state pollution control boards, to intervene and stop such activity. So the prevention and control of water pollution is achieved through a kind of a permit or a consent administration procedure. The discharge of effluents is permitted by obtaining the consent of the state pollution control board or water board, subject to any condition they specify. Now let us discuss about the Air Act 1981. It is technically it is called as the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. The Air Act is definitely a central act of Parliament which provides for the prevention and control of air pollution and maintaining the good quality of air. This act makes provisions for the central and state boards, and it also has provisions as kind of a power to declare the pollution control areas, and also suitable measures, or it can definitely have certain restrictions on certain industrial units which is polluting. Yeah. And the next important aspect as per the Air Act is concerned, it provides a lot of authority to the boards, the pollution control boards, to limit the emission of air pollutants. And also it is having they provided a lot of tools through the boards, so that they have the power to enter, inspect, take samples, and also analyze and even penalize the industrial bodies, industrial organizations which is causing a lot of pollution. So the Act specifically empowers the state government to designate air pollution areas, as I said earlier, air pollution areas, and to prescribe the type of fuel to be used in these designated areas. Okay. And according to this Act, no person can operate certain types of industries which is causing a lot of pollution, like your asbestos industries, cement industries, or fertilizer industries, petroleum industries, without the consent of the state board. Further, the pollution control boards have been set up by the government to measure pollution levels in the atmosphere and at certain sources by testing the air. This act, this Air Act 1981 is created to take appropriate steps for the prevention and also preservation of the natural resources of the earth, which includes preservation of high quality air and also controlling the level of air pollution. So, to sum it up, as far as this act is concerned, the main objectives of this act is to provide for the prevention, control and abatement of air pollution. The second important objective of this Air Act is to provide for the establishment of the central and state boards with a view to implement the act effectively. The third important objective of this Air Act 1981 is to confer on the boards the powers to implement the provisions of the act and assign the board's functions relating to pollution management. Next is let us discuss about the establishment of the Ministry of Environment and Forest. Now we call it as Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And a very important development has taken place in the 1970s, particularly in 1976, through Constitutional Amendment Act, Article 48 was included into the Constitution. And this act, or Constitutional Amendment Act, is the milestone as far as the environmental legislation is concerned. This Article 48A states, I quote here, that the states shall endeavour to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. It is a very, very important article in our Indian Constitution, that is Article 48A. And second important, kind of a corollary from this particular Article 48 is, the wildlife and forest from the state list was transferred to the concurrent list, so as to enable the central government to go for legislations on this particular subject, that is wildlife, forest and environment. That is a very, very important development. And just because of this thing, if you discuss all kind of environmental legislation, it is having an all India effect, pan India effect, just because that the central government, the laws of the central government is having a preeminence over the state acts. And furthermore, if you look at the the importance of the environment, so definitely this Article 48A, which has enabled the shifting of the subjects like wildlife, the environment and forest from the state list to the concurrent list, is the most important development. I have already said that because this we are talking about the ministry, it's because of the recommendations of the N.D. Tiwari Committee. The Department of Environment was established in 1980, that we have seen, and that was rechristened the Ministry of Environment and Forest in 1985. When you look at this particular ministry, this ministry is responsible for planning, promoting and coordinating and overseeing the implementation of the environmental and the forestry programs in the country. Forest is a very, very important thing, because many of the policies on forest has been passed by the government, and in order to make these laws, the policies, the programs effective, this ministry is having a very, very prime role to play. So the main activities undertaken by the ministry include conservation of and survey of the flora and fauna of our country, and also forest and other wilderness areas. And another activity subsequently, if we look at it very deeply into the functioning of the Ministry of Environment and Forest, is to prevent and control the pollution, whether it is air pollution, water pollution or radioactive pollution, for that matter any kind of pollution. So the main ambit or mandate this ministry is to prevent and control the pollution, and also take as much steps possible to go for increasing the forest area through afforestation projects, and also mitigate the land degradation, so that definitely the environmental degradation, like the deforestation, land degradation, soil problematic soils, that can be contained. So this is also the mandate of the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. This ministry is also responsible for the administration of the national parks. It's a very, very important resources, natural resources, so that definitely not only the national parks, the living organisms, I'm talking about the richness, biodiversity rich areas like national parks and the biodiversity reserves, wildlife sanctuaries, everything will make our country to develop sustainably, and also provide all possible the services, ecosystem services to the citizens. So this particular ministry is playing a pivotal role in the management of natural resources. The ministry is guided by the principle of sustainable development and enhancement of human well-being. So when I say sustainable development, whatever we have discussed till now, so all along the basic bottom line is the development, and the development along with the economic development, it should be sustainable. That is the reason why the focus has been on all the possible natural resources in our country, and also the well-being, ecological basis of our existence also was managed properly by suitable appropriate environmental legislations. So in order to manage, in order to effectively implement the environmental legislations, the ministry is playing a pivotal role. The ministry also serves as the nodal agency, like United Nations Environmental Program, South Asia Cooperative Environmental Program, it's called SACP, and also International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. That's a very important activity, because whatever the actions, whatever the measures, whatever the policies we are dealing with as far as the environment is concerned, it is having a wider role to play, because the canvas is the complete global earth. So definitely ministry is also playing as a nodal agency in our country, so that all the activities, the United Nations activities, also implemented properly in our country also. The ministry is also interested with issues related to multilateral bodies, like your Commission on Sustainable Development, and GEF, it's called Global Environmental Facility, and regional bodies like SARC, ESCAP. SARC means South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. So this also comes under the ministry's purview. So now look at the broad objectives of the ministry. So first is the conservation of flora, fauna, forest and wildlife. That is in fact the first important objective of the ministry. The second is, as I said, it is the related with the pollution. So both prevention and control of pollution, whether it is an air pollution or water pollution or radioactive pollution or any kind of pollutions. The third important objectives of the ministry is the related with the forest, because it's a wonderful resource actually, because forest is having a forward linkage with all kind of ecosystem services, whether it's a biodiversity or in fact everything possible, because it's having it related with even your biochemical cycling of nutrients as well. So forest, that means I am talking about the afforestation activity, even the regeneration of the degraded areas with tree species, and this is objective of the ministry. And definitely when we discuss about these things, definitely the protection of environment is also comes under the purview of the ministry, and also the welfare of the wild animals also. So it's having a wide role to play. Besides the legislative measures, we have discussed about the Air Act, Water Act, and subsequently we will be discussing about the Environmental Protection Act 1986 also. Certain policy statements, certain policies also guide the ministry like your National Conservation Strategy and Policy Statement on Environment and Development 1992. It's a wonderful document. That is a policy document that also guides the ministry's work. And National Forest Policy 1988, it's a very important policy. And then way back 1988 it was established. And this particular National Forest Policy 1988 provide the measures, also certain guidelines to the government so as to increase the forest area in our country. I mean, 1/3 of our geographical area should be under forest, and that is the important mandate of this particular National Forest Policy 1988. Another document is the policy statement on abatement of pollution, and next one is definitely the National Environmental Policy 2006. So these are all the policy documents, and the kind of it acts like a guide to the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. So now let us discuss about the Environmental Protection Act 1986. It's a very important development as far as the environmental legislation is concerned. The central government enacted this particular legislation in 1986 with the basic objective for the protection and improvement of the environment, and of course all the matters connected with this the protection and management of the environment. This act extends to all of India, span India. In fact, as a remedy to the lacuna that was noticed in the earlier acts like Water Act and what's it called, Air Act. So that is a very important development, because whatever the problems we have faced in the implementation of the Water Act and Air Act, it has been rectified in this particular act, Environmental Protection Act 1986. So in order to make it more effective, the Air Act also and Water Act was amended with suitable provisions so that it would be definitely on par with the EPA 1986, and also it will be giving more power, more teeth to the implementing agencies to make the act and to make the concerned programs and projects more effective. As per this act, the central government shall have the power to take all such measures for the purpose of protecting and improving the quality of the environment and to prevent the environmental pollution. That is an important mandate of this particular act. The central government also shall have the power to give directions in writing to any person, an officer or any authority for that matter, including the power to direct the closure, the prohibition or regulation of any industry operations and processes as well. So this is having a ultimate power, this particular act, and it provides a lot of power to the implementing agencies as well. So the salient features of this Environmental Protection Act 1986 includes providing power to the implementing agencies and take all possible measures for protecting quality of the environment, and even coordinate also. It will coordinate the actions of the states, the officers and other authorities related with the environmental management. So it will coordinate, and that is also an important objective or an important feature of this Environmental Protection Act 1986. And this another important feature of this act is to plan and execute a nationwide program, whether it's a forest program, forestation program, or for controlling the pollution, environmental pollution also. It is having the power to plan and execute, and that's a very important aspect of this particular Act 1986. Another important feature of this Act is it will lay down certain standards, environmental standards for discharge of environmental pollutants. That is a very important thing, because only when you have the standard, the implementing agencies, the control boards, the pollution control boards will be more effective in managing the environment. To safeguard the environment, these standards are very, very essential. This act also, definitely, because once you have all the provisions, it has to empower the persons, the authorities to inspect any industries or for that matter any polluting activity. So this is also providing a lot of power to the authorities to enter into any of the institutions. I am talking about the industrial establishments and inspect, take samples, and subsequently they can analyze also. And definitely if it is below the standard, if it is not meeting the standards, definitely the penal action will be taken against the industries polluting the environment. The Act also confers the central government, because this now the environment is under the concurrent list. So the Act confers enough power on the central government to establish the environmental laboratories, because they can test the samples collected by the authorities. And also when you have a laboratory, definitely you need to appoint certain the analyst when who will be monitoring, in fact who will be managing the particular environmental laboratory. And the Act also lay down certain standards, how to operate upon everything, even the procedures and everything has been established properly by the Act, so that there will not be any kind of loopholes. And it can also restrict certain areas in which any industries, operations or processes may not be carried out subject to certain safeguards. It's a very important aspect of this Act. So this Act requires any person, officer or authority to furnish any prescribed information, and it also delegates the powers to any officer of a state or an authority. The Act also confers the central government to lay down procedures and safeguards for handling hazardous substances. Now let us discuss about the Central Pollution Control Board, CPCB. The CPCB was constituted in 1974 under the Water Act 1974. The CPCB was entrusted with the powers and functions under the Air Act as well, Air Act 1981. The Central Pollution Control Board provides technical services to the Ministry of Environment and Forest. The CPCB plays important role in abatement and control of pollution in the country by generating relevant data, providing scientific information, and also rendering technical inputs for the formation of national policies and programs, training and development of manpower, capacity building, and organizing activities promoting awareness at different levels of the government and the public. So the principal function of the CPCB is to promote cleanliness of the streams and the water bodies like wells in different areas of the states by prevention, control and abatement of water pollution, and to improve the quality of air and to prevent, control or abate air pollution in the country. So the CPCB runs nationwide programs of ambient air quality monitoring, known as the National Air Quality Monitoring Program, with the objectives to determine the present air quality status and trends to control and regulate the pollution from industries and other sources to meet the air quality standards. So the one of the important mandates of the CPCB is to collect, collate and disseminate the technical and statistical data related to water pollution as well. The CPCB manages environmental data statistic in which air quality data and water quality data comes through. In the case of air quality data, it measures the level of sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxide, particulate matter, suspended particulate matter. The CPCB also measures and maintains water quality data as well. Both air and water quality does all the analysis and everything, and it maintains a huge amount of data at the national level. Now let us discuss about the State Pollution Control Board. There are State Pollution Control Board at various state capitals of the country to advise respective state governments to control and protect the environment. All state pollution control boards look after the interests of their respective states where they function. They implement the directives from the Central Pollution Control Board and all acts which are enacted from time to time. It's central government acts, like in EPA 1986 and subsequently even the environmental impact assessment, all the acts, it will be providing a lot of support to the state government about the functionalities, about the provisions, about the features of the Central Act. The the SPCB has also branches at different towns in the states. A person of repute in the field of environment and the environmental scientist is the SPCB as a chairperson. The SPCB, State Pollution Control Board, has its own team of scientists and laboratories to check the quality of air, soil, water from the samples collected from the authorities. So in this session, we have discussed about the national environmental legislations starting from the ND Tiwari Committee, how we have established different acts like Water Act, Air Act and Environmental Protection Act 1986, and we have discussed the boards, Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Board. Thank you.